Alrighty, we are recording. Welcome everyone to the APE podcast. APE stands for the American Pursuit of Excellence, somewhat of my motto when I talk to peers or younger folks. But really, this is a platform for open dialogue. Really, just trying to bring people together. I think there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, as well as our society and community, but. Really, the best path forward is just talking to people, trading ideas, and trying to challenge our own beliefs. But excited to sit here for episode 21. So I've made some good progress over the past few months. But sitting here with Sarah and Isaac. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Good.
So I, 3.5 weeks ago we met over at the Charlie Kirk event over at San Diego State. Which I would love to get your perspective on in a minute. But if you don't mind just briefly introducing yourself, either one of you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Isaac. I just recently retired from the Navy after 4 years, 4 months, and 16 days.
Thank you for your service.
Of course. Loved it in many ways, but also was difficult and challenging. But glad to be on the other side now, working on higher education, and just we got a lot going on this year, so we're excited for all that this year has in store for us.
Nice.
Yep, and I'm Sarah. I am a teacher by trade. I'm an elementary teacher. Right now I'm not teaching, I'm just nannying, and we have a lot of things coming up, and I'm excited to talk.
Awesome, I appreciate it. So like I said, we met over at the Charlie Kirk event at San Diego State, so that was where I went to school, but
Okay.
You guys are not from California, correct?
No.
Correct.
Yeah.
I am from Michigan, and he's from Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would you summarize the difference between the environment you grew up in and San Diego, California?
For me, it was probably the biggest change. I'm from a little farm town, nothing. My town has 1,000 people in it.
Wow.
In my whole entire town, and I graduated with 11 people, so a very small country farm town. And then I came here, and obviously it's massive, it's overwhelming, it's overstimulating for a really long time. And it took me, I got here in December, probably February, I felt comfortable. And I figured out all the roads and the highways and just the hecticness of it. But it was definitely a big change for sure.
Yeah. And how about yourself?
I always came from a big area, so my graduating class had about 2,000 kids in my grade. So
Another big city.
Another big city. The north suburbs, so it was a little different than downtown, what a lot of people are picturing. But besides the climate, honestly, I'm used to the hustle and bustle of the city, and I do enjoy it, but I'm looking to kind of get away from it a little bit and get some more space and peace.
Yeah. Well, I feel because I've been to Chicago only twice, and I think public transportation's a lot bigger out there compared to SoCal. We don't really have. We have our MTS, train, but no one's really using it that much. It's more just get in your car and sit in traffic.
Yeah.
Was that a big difference for you?
Downtown, a lot of people definitely take a lot of trains called the L. Even from the suburbs, you would take it down to the city all the time. So a little bit of a change, but we don't mind driving. So
yeah. Well,
not too bad.
Welcome to California and San Diego.
Yes.
You guys moved here, I think you said December?
I moved here December.
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
He's been here a while.
I've been here 2.5 years now.
Yeah. And then what made you, do you mind me asking how old you are? Or?
Yeah. I'm 21.
Okay.
I am 23.
23? Okay, wow. So you guys are younger than me. I'm 26. Not much older, but, it's most folks I've talked to on the podcast are older. So it's nice to see younger folks. And I know, when we talked at the Charlie Kirk event, you mentioned that you guys were married, and I knew that you were younger.
Yes.
Something we don't necessarily see too much these days. What, how did you guys meet? What made you get in, how did you decide to do that, right?
Yeah.
That's big, massive change.
It is, yeah. We have a crazy story how we met. We actually met on TikTok. It was during COVID, so everything was shut down. Nobody had anything to do, and so I was posting dancing videos for my 2 followers. I was no way by any means famous, and it was just for fun, right? I was bored, and for whatever reason, a God story, I popped up on his For You page, and he saw me, and then he messaged me through TikTok, and that led to us talking on Snapchat for 2 years, and we never met each other. We just talked. We dated other people in the process, flirted here and there. But
Cross your fingers. Each other was real.
Yeah, right? Because we don't know. And we'd FaceTime occasionally, call, but it was just that friend, At that point, I was in Michigan. He was in boot camp in South Carolina. And he was like, we should meet. And I was like, no, like, I'm good. Like, we're just an online friendship. And I, like, truly did not want to. And so he was like, no, come down to South Carolina to see me. And I don't even know if he's real. I'm not flying all the way to South Carolina. Like,
disobeying your parents,
right,
probably.
He could be a murderer. Like, I don't know. And so I was like, no, I'm not coming. And he was like, okay, fine. He got deployed. He was gone for 9 months. We talked, you know, when he could. But I was like, okay, whatever. Like, that friendship's gone. I, like, truly was unfazed. And then he got back from deployment, pulled himself back together, and then he was like, we need to meet for real. And I was like, okay, it's been like 2 years. I guess we should. So he flew out to see me in Michigan, and we instantly started dating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were just complicit in all this, huh?
I guess so.
Yeah. So that must have been interesting, though, because, I mean, I did not serve in the military. I have some friends who did, but I know you're kind of like off and on access to cell phones / multiple months without a cell phone. Like, did you know that you wanted to get married or in a relationship, or just kind of like happened and then eventually you had the opportunity to meet up?
I think a lot of it was just like, it wasn't forced.
Yeah.
It just a lot was very natural, and something in my heart was just telling me that this felt right, and I just needed to take that leap of faith. So I decided to hop on a plane and go see her, and then at that moment, like, something just felt right. So I knew that was something I wanted to pursue. I was always open to getting married young, but I never put pressure on myself. I have to be married by 23 or 25. I just always told myself, when I know, I'll know. Yeah. So I really just let that gut feeling lead my decisions.
Yeah. And did you both come from like religious families, or?
Yeah, I grew up in a very religious household my whole life.
Yeah.
I would say off and on, but it was really individual in high school where I kind of had to pursue it myself, and really where I found my faith.
Yeah. Okay. Because, yeah, I mean, you're Korean, I'm Vietnamese, so I know there's a lot of similarities, of course, between the cultures. Right. You know, do your homework and become a doctor unless you're, or else you're a failure, right? No, my mom was great, but that's interesting, because I do think that, I mean, a lot of, like, it sounds like you both came from traditional families. Am I wrong? I mean, usually most Asian families or households are. How about you?
Yeah, very traditional, very conservative.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And then I guess taking a step back, so, you know, you're 23, you grew up in Chicago. What was like early life like for you? What were there any major, challenges you had to overcome? Was there any, aspects of your parents' style that you felt, positively shaped you? Maybe you can do a little background for us.
So I grew up around Chicago, but actually I moved around a ton. So I lived in South Korea for some time, lived in Pennsylvania.
You speak Korean?
I do speak Korean, yes.
Damn, that's nice. I don't speak any Vietnamese. Really? I know, I get made fun of by my cousins. I'm the white cousin.
Yeah. I'm trilingual, so it's nice to always be able to be in touch with your roots.
What's the third language?
Spanish.
Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. How did that come about?
Just learned it through elementary school, middle school, high school, and then went on a mission trip to Costa Rica. Also traveled to Spain for school. So
nice.
Just learn Spanish is another good language to know.
Yeah, through repetition, right? Yeah. That's what it is.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, I think there's a lot of life events that happened that shaped a lot of things. But like you said, very traditional family of always putting a lot of pressure, and out of love always, of like, I want you to be successful. So I played, 10 plus sports as a kid. I played all the instruments and did all the extracurriculars, and that definitely shaped a lot of the discipline and the passion that I carry today. I still pursue music and sports, and golf is my passion. Continue to play tournaments. So a lot of that has carried over since my childhood. And a lot of those traits that I've developed as a kid has definitely still with me to this day.
Yeah. Well, especially like I've never played golf before. I mean, I used to go out with my friends to just hit balls at the driving range, no form, just full brute strength. And sometimes it would go far, sometimes it wouldn't.
Yep.
But yeah, I know from my friends and especially work colleagues who play golf, it's a true mental game. I mean, you need patience, you need discipline. So, I mean, I think that's reflective of your character by just, being into that sport, or at least, like, did you grow up playing, or?
I played since I was probably about 10 or so, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's golf, you learn so many life skills, like the patience, the mental strength, and just the act of practicing and getting better, like the grind. I really like the grind of golf has really helped me to this day of like just getting through the tough times, putting in the work. So golf is huge in my life and something that I definitely want to pass on to our kids of it doesn't have to be golf, but like be passionate about something, like do something you love and work at it and do your best to be great at it.
Yeah, there's a book I have referenced on previous discussions, but I'm a big proponent of the book. It's called How Champions Think. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Heard of it.
Yeah, so it kind of changed my perspective because, I grew up playing soccer. I love soccer. I play twice a week. I manage a few teams, managing peers. I'm not really coaching or anything, but managing the Venmo and all that stuff. But I love soccer, and it's a really international sport, right? Absolutely. So it's something that really brings people together. Again, I grew up in a pretty multi-ethnic, cultural environment, but everyone loves soccer, right? Even if we didn't speak the same language. But the book, How Champions Think, so it was a sports psychologist who basically, he was like, 35 plus years as a sports psychologist, and he would analyze top tier business folks as well as top tier athletes. And he basically saw all these common denominators between them where it's like, okay, you're not going to get better unless you do repetition, right? It's like LeBron James, even if he's really talented, is shooting 3-pointers all the time, is practicing, his layups, whatever it is. Same with golf. And it's just interesting because although I don't know pretty much anything about golf, the book, the psychologist was big on golf. So he was always talking about, Tiger Woods and all that stuff. But and that basically led me to my third discussion was with my friend Adriana, who I grew up with. But she's a professional female tackle football player. So she's... Wow. I think only like 5'2", but she can squat probably twice as much as me. Yeah. She's really fast. She works really hard. Yeah. Comes from a good family, but so she ended up getting picked up for the USA team. So and actually went out to Finland and won their version of the World Cup. So huge accomplishment. Yeah. And I was just because I learned so much through that book, I was like, hey, can we sit down and I'll interview you and just what makes you get up every morning to do your early morning workouts, like. What challenges did you have to overcome? Like clearly you weren't, when you get picked up and go to Team USA, you're probably not the best player. Like how do you overcome that, right? So there was a lot of stuff that transferred over to me in my career that allowed me to excel and accept humility, right? Like none of us are the smartest in the room, right? So that's really interesting. I guess like for you grew up in Michigan, right? So what I mean, you mentioned that your family was somewhat traditional. How did they shape you and, morph you, the version you are today?
Yeah. My parents obviously did a lot, but I would say more so my siblings. I'm the oldest of 5. Wow. And so big family. And I think you just learn things in big families that you don't necessarily learn so easily and pick up easily like in smaller families. Like I'm the oldest, so I had a lot of leadership, a lot of pressure on my shoulders, setting the example for everyone below me, right? Not like I did parenting, but I would, like pick up the slack, like help them, lead them, guide them. And I think that leadership aspect is something I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't in a big family, and let alone being the oldest. Every kid in the family, every place, has a different role, right? So the youngest obviously isn't going to have as much pressure as I do. And the things she picks up in a big family are different than me. But my siblings shaped me a lot. We're extremely, extremely close family. So you're with them in good, you're with them in bad. You talk about everything. My family is very open. And I think that camaraderie, that closeness, and that unity, knowing that I'll always have my family no matter what happens at school or, health issues or wherever, I've always got them. And that just gave me a lot of confidence growing up. And to this day, like I'm very solid and secure in who I am. And I think that has a lot to do with the identity my family put in me. Like this is our family. We love each other. Just that family unit really shaped a lot of who I am today.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if you guys, Jordan Peterson, I'm a huge Jordan Peterson guy. I like psychology. I like a lot of the stuff that he says, but he's a big advocate on responsibility for kids, right? And, there's a lot of parenting styles these days where you don't want too much on the kid's plate, but it sounds like, your upbringing and your upbringing, they put a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys have failed before, and you kind of learn through scars, as I like to say.
Yeah.
But I think, like me on the other hand, I was the youngest of 6. So I know, like, my oldest sister is probably has her shit together the most, you know, compared to the rest of us. And she's about 20 years older than me. So she took care of me growing up and, you know, had similar to you, was like a big impact and role model to the rest of us.
Yeah.
And I think I probably wouldn't have the same mindset I have today if I didn't have her as an example, or at least my, you know, parents.
Yeah.
So that I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
So I know that, we met at the Charlie Kirk event, and I mentioned to you guys earlier that was like the first time I've ever gone to any event like that. And, you know, I came across him on YouTube, like most people, after Jordan Peterson. So it's like kind of introduced me to this whole world of like conservative spokespeople, I guess you can call them. And what's interesting too is like there's left-leaning people that are associated with that group, but are advocating the same stuff, where it's like, doesn't matter what your political views are, so long as you tolerate other views and allow people to speak their opinions and trade ideas and challenge your own. So it's not necessarily like a right-wing thing, but I do think that they're kind of paving the path for like showing people, hey, it's not, you know, it's not a bad thing to speak up. You know, you should speak up, especially if you see some wrongdoings in society. And even more so, the fact that they're going to college campuses where you get the craziest of freaking kids who are going out waving communist flags. And, you know, it's crazy, but they're actually going out there and sitting there and arguing with these kids and debating these kids. So I have a lot of respect for people like that. But what made you guys want to go to that event?
I'm a huge Charlie Kirk fan.
Yeah.
I didn't really used to be into politics that much, and then COVID happened, and it kind of just opened my eyes to a lot of different things, and then I like really dove in, and now I'm way too deep in politics.
Yeah.
I love politics.
It gets a little mind-numbing, huh?
It does, yeah. It's a lot. But I love Charlie Kirk, and I lived in Michigan, a small little town in Michigan, and so obviously he's never going to come to like a little farm town. And so when I moved here and heard he was coming, I was like, we have to go. Like, I listened to every single podcast he puts out, and I agree with almost every single thing that he puts out there. And I have a lot of respect for him and how he's just strong and understands so many different topics. Like you said, he can sit there and not know who's going to come up or what topic they're going to bring up, but he can argue it, and he's very knowledgeable. And I have a lot of respect for him and just how he's strong and unapologetic in what he believes in. And he'll sit there and debate respectfully, you know, but I love him. And so I was like, we have to go. We have to go. And
you just got roped into that yourself? Or
I do like Charlie Kirk as well.
Yeah.
He's a very strong Christian, and he's very strong in his beliefs. And just like you said, like, you need a mentor, and to us, he's our political mentor.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, we look up to him, and just the way he carries himself, the life that he lives, the things that he speaks about, like 100%, we support him. So we were like, let's go see what he has to say, and obviously it was amazing. I don't know what you thought about it, but it was just the best.
Yeah. No, I loved the event. Like I said, it was my first time going to that, but I know just at least the videos I've seen online, and even the fact that most of the event was him engaging in dialogue with folks who agreed, and the folks who disagree go to the front of the line, which I really like. But what was really eye-opening to me, just coming across these folks, similar to Jordan Peterson, is, you know, you get these college kids come up and they're like, well, you're a crazy racist. And he's like, have you listened to anything that I said? Or are you only, you know, in your echo chamber on Instagram and TikTok of, you know, some radical progressive, like cutting up and clipping and reframing all this stuff that he's saying, to where they think he's some crazy white supremacist. And it's like, I've listened to, and I get in arguments with people I know too about Jordan Peterson. It's like, people think he's some, you know, frat bro transphobe. And it's like, have you listened to anything the guy fucking says? It's crazy. It's like, I've listened over 100+ hours of the guy. I don't think he's a transphobe. I actually think his ideas promote the least amount of suffering for trans people, you know what I mean? Or black people, or it doesn't necessarily matter. But so to me, it was like, I really agree with folks like Charlie Kirk and Jordan Peterson, but it was even more eye-opening the fact that people come in so angry at these folks, and they haven't even listened to what they're saying.
100%.
And then now it's like, wow, the world of politics and the toxicity of it's starting to make more sense. It's like, and it's, you know, there's another psychologist I like, Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book, The Coddling of the American Mind. But he basically talks about how Gen Z, so that's us, unfortunately, how Gen Z, you know, we were, 12, 11, 10 years old when social media came out. And it's like that was a massive impact on our undeveloped brains. So you get these kids who are like, oh, well, you know, I only like looking at progressive social justice stuff. So the AI is only going to feed me that stuff. I don't hear any opposing views. Yeah, the algorithm. And all of a sudden you get these people who are just in, you know, and it could be on either political spectrum, but the bad part about it is you're in an echo chamber. You're not hearing diverse opinions, and it's easy to kind of hide behind the screen, right? Versus like actually having a face-to-face conversation with people, even if you disagree on stuff. So it's like really not healthy, and it caused all these, you know, repercussions and consequences of like, you know, I graduated high school in 2015, and I think Jonathan Haidt says in 2015, once my year started to get to college, you know, they're like, well, I don't want to learn about slavery. That's, you know, no, that's racist. And it's like, I need trigger warnings. I need safe spaces. And it was like, what the heck? Like you're supposed to be challenged, and you're supposed to be uncomfortable when you go to college. Once we start removing that, that's where we get these massive echo chambers. And it's like someone like a Ben Shapiro or a Charlie Kirk, they can't go to a college campus without people breaking windows and like throwing stuff at them. And it's like, that's threats. Not good. Yeah, seriously. So for me, it was like, you know, again, I was never really into politics or any of that stuff. But when I start to see crazy shit like that, it's like, well, fortunately, I have my shit together. And I feel like I'm in a position to start, you know, having these conversations, making videos in my garage, you know what I mean? But that, you know, random tangent, but so I really liked the Charlie Kirk event. I don't know if you guys have you guys listened to like Candace Owens at all? I know she does some
Candace
stuff.
Owens, support her to the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know, when I first came across her was doing, I think it was like on Dr. Phil, but she did some debate about affirmative action. And she's like, hey, you know, affirmative action and like most, you know, I think progressive ideas, they sound really good on the surface, but in reality, they actually produce more harm for those that they're purporting to help, right? So it's like, hey, I would love to see more black surgeons and CEOs. It's like, who wouldn't, right? Like, what? I don't care about race, but when we start to say we need to lower the standard for people, I would prefer not to lower standards for pilots and surgeons. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So. But anyway, I could go on all day about this type of stuff. So you mentioned that like you guys are both religious today, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Do you guys engage in church activities or?
We go to Awaken Church.
Okay.
We love our
Off
church.
of Balboa?
Yes.
Yeah,
wow.
that's the one
I go to the gym right across the street. I always drive by.
Fitness, together.
Nice.
He's on the worship team. He's the drummer for Awaken.
I think I saw that on social media. That I have some questions for you on that, but finish.
Yeah. We love our church. We go twice a week. We're very active in our faith.
Yeah,
and we love this church. It's a very political church, which is something that society right now is saying, oh, churches shouldn't be political, but it's the complete opposite. I think churches should lead in political ideas because they're the ones that are founded upon good principles. So I love that our church is actually partnered with TP USA as well. Charlie Kirk's company. Yep, they have a TP USA. So yeah, our pastors are always talking about current events and what the biblical perspective of that is and how we as Americans, as Christ followers should engage in society. And I've grown so much in the last 2 years from that church, and the leaders there are amazing. They have so much fruit in their lives. A lot of them are CEOs or business owners, and they're just doing great in life. They have a touch on their life that just says like they worked hard. They have good fruit on their life. How can I be like that? And it's those people that are speaking into our lives. So it's just been amazing.
It's a good sales pitch. But no, I think you kind of touched on that earlier, and Jordan Peterson says the same thing where, you know, theology is the foundation of our society, and then above that is politics or culture, you know, and then above that is culture or politics, right? So it's kind of that hierarchy where, you know, a lot of folks talk about how we live in a godless society, which we kind of do, right? Like I was born and raised in California, like my dad is not religious whatsoever, but he still works hard and he has all these values instilled in him, even if he's not super religious himself, but he still had a lot of, I think Jordan Peterson calls it like a social credit, where it's like his parents were really religious. So they were teaching him morals and they were teaching him, you know, all this stuff. And I think that carried over to him. But he's not a churchgoer. Neither am myself. I think it would be good for me, to be honest. But I think, like, since we aren't as religious of a society, there's a lot less community engagement from people.
Yeah.
And as I started to think, like, okay, well, what would be healthy for me? Well, humility, avoiding ego, expressing gratitude for things that I am grateful for, as well as, community engagement. And it's like, what the hell? Like, church does all this stuff. Like, what? No one told me about this. You know what I mean? So it's just like kind of full circle a bit, right? Whereas like a lot of people, you grow up and you're like, the religious people are the crazy ones. Like, they're believing in fictional stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I used to think that myself until I came across like Jordan Peterson, and he, he's a psychologist, but he provides, the psychological significance of religion and the benefits of all that stuff. So it's just really interesting. And, I know for a goal of myself is like try to get involved in the community. So maybe I'll hit you guys up and go check out the spot. And
we have church tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll do some handshaking. Yeah. What time do you guys go on Wednesdays?
The service starts at 6:30.
Nice.
Yeah, p.m.
Interesting.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And just the atmosphere. It's just so amazing to see a room full of hundreds of people who are so hungry for God and
purpose and meaning
that they come in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
And even Tuesday mornings we have men's prayers. Thursday mornings we have women's prayers. We have a men's ministry and conference. Like our church is always doing stuff for the people in that church to always pursue their relationship with God, and it's just amazing to be surrounded by those kind of people.
Yeah. And I would say to your point, they're not so much seeking purpose and meaning. I mean, they are, and they get that at church, but more so they're seeking a relationship with God, because religion is an umbrella term, but Christianity is more about a relationship with him and getting to know him personally. It's not so much like about these laws, right? Like do this, you'll have a good life, whatever. It's about having a personal relationship with him. So, yes, all those people are there, you could say, to find purpose and meaning, but it's more so to experience him, to have the presence of him, to be in his presence, to worship him. And that's why they're there, more so than, some good, happy feelings like, oh, I feel better, I went to church, I'm a good person, check that box. It's, I'm going to church to experience the living God in front of me with all of these people. And it's just incredible. You should come.
Yeah. No, I'm sold on the idea for sure. And I know for me, like, a few years after graduating college, I was like working hard. I felt like I had more money and freedom than ever. Yet I was like, really depressed. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And part of my, probably like 2.5 year depression, that whole journey, I know that one of the things that impacted me most was Stoic philosophy. If you guys have ever heard of like Stoicism. So it's kind of like a Marcus Aurelius, an old ancient Roman king, and basically, compiled a book of wisdom and philosophy on how can you live to reduce your own suffering and also reduce the suffering of those around you. And that was, I think I could be getting my dates wrong, but I think it was like 2500 BC. So a long ass time ago, right? Yet it's still so accurate and impactful today. And for me, like, as I started to think about that, and I was like, I used to be the guy angry, yelling in traffic when you're not going anywhere. You might as well not waste your energy, right? So like the fact that had such a hard impact on me kind of opened up my eyes to like, well, wait, isn't like religion the same thing? It's like compiled wisdom over thousands of years based on human nature. So it's like whether you consider yourself religious or not, you can extract wisdom and benefit from this stuff.
100%.
It is wisdom.
100%.
So that's kind of how I look at it these days. Do you guys have those conversations in your community or?
100%. I mean, we're a Bible-based church. We're always talking about the Bible. Like, the big difference between knowledge and wisdom is that wisdom is everlasting. Yeah. So we always try to look into the Bible for what does that say about the circumstances that we're walking through today, because it's the same God yesterday, today, and forever on. That wisdom is everlasting. So we're always trying to dig deep, and every time you read, it's just so interesting. There's pastors who have read the Bible for decades and decades, and they can still learn something new. Yeah. Like, it is just the most amazing book that you can read. And
because it's alive and active. It's not just like a book on a shelf that like, you read and then you're like, oh, I read that book. No, there's something new every time because God's alive and he's speaking through those words on the page. And that is probably the biggest thing that's transformed our lives for me when I was little, and now that's our thing that guides our life every single day, the Bible. Not so much a pastor or a person, which we do, take wisdom from other people, but at the end of the day, it's the Bible. That's God's word. That's what he said, and that alone is the only thing that drives us.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said too about, people who have been reading it for decades, they can still learn something new.
100%.
And that's another Jordan Peterson thing, right? Where I think he was a non-religious individual, went, higher ed or world of academia, all that stuff. I don't know if he was openly atheist, but he kind of considered himself that way.
Yeah.
And then after he became a doctor of psychology, started reading the Bible and was like, what the heck? Like, this thing is like incredibly accurate in terms of human phenomenon and the fact that we do suffer with greed and we do suffer from lust and ego and all this type of stuff. So that's really interesting. I guess taking a step back, so I'm part of the one of the missions of the podcast is to foster patriotism, right? I think that's what's cool about us going to the Charlie Kirk event is like everyone's got American flags and they fucking love the country and people of all different, skin colors and sexes and, all that type of stuff. And even people with accents coming out and saying like, I left my crappy country to come to America, right? And like, episode 1 on my podcast was my mom fled Vietnam after the fall of Saigon. And, I know with some of the podcasts I've been listening to recently is like, there's a reason people are fleeing other countries, risking their lives to come here and not fleeing here to go to other countries. So it's like, even if America's not perfect, we're doing something right. So would you guys consider yourself pretty patriotic? I mean, you served in the military, of course.
100%. I mean, we love this country.
Yeah.
What's actually cool is that this is the only country that was founded upon Judeo-Christian values. It's all written all over the Constitution, and to this day, they're trying to erase it and they're trying to get rid of it. But I heard this pastor say one time, Israel may be God's chosen people in the Bible, but we're the only nation that chose God. So there's a touch of fruit on that like over the past, 200 something years that we are the country that decided to choose God, to pursue after him, to found our Constitution, our Declaration, our founding principles on the Bible and God's values. And I think that is so important and a big factor in why we are thriving today, why people in other countries want to come here, because obviously we have fruit. We are thriving. Well, we were, and I hope to continue that we will. But as we see less and less God, which is what we're seeing in society right now, I think is hurting our reputation and is causing the downfall. So I think a big thing is as we love our country and love God more and more will be the rise of our country again. And I think that's a big thing that our youth need to know, and our young adults need to continue to pursue after.
Yeah. I would just echo that, like going back to our country, how it used to be. We have all these new ideas and we're trying to do all these things, but that's not how we were founded. That's not the reason people came to this country, for religious freedom. So I think to make America great again, or to get our country back, we need to go back to the basics, back to the Constitution, back to the Declaration of Independence, back to what it's saying, back to how the country was founded and what our foundational leaders wanted for us, the vision Abraham Lincoln had for us, George Washington, and stick with that, because there was fruit there and there was prosperity there for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's evidence too, right? Yeah. It's like we have, over the past few hundred years, lifted 90% of humanity out of poverty through capitalism and through just wealth, right? We make energy cheaper, right? We have property rights. Right. We have, and I think what people really forget about that is, because I totally agree, right? Like, even if I don't consider myself very religious, I agree that the fact that we built our society based on Judeo-Christian values is the reason why we're so prosperous, right? And I think what people forget too is, like, we have Muslim people, we have Buddhist people. We allow for any freedom of religion. Do practice whatever the hell you want, so long as we unite as Americans. Right. Yeah. And that's why there's this big debate right now about multiculturalism, and it's like, listen, we live in a multi-ethnic society, which is awesome, but multicultural, I'm not sure. I actually think that's a bad idea, because if you could be, again, any religion, any race, whatever, but you come to America and you embrace being American, it's like, hey, maybe I'm Muslim and my neighbor's Jewish. We don't care. We just want no one to shoot each other. We want our kids to walk to school without danger. I don't want my stuff being broken into, right? I don't want the government coming in and taking my freaking money or telling me what I can or can't do. 100%. We transcend religion in that sense to be American and unite under one culture. And I think that's what really, people will be like, oh, you're Islamophobic for saying that. It's like, no, I'm actually not, because Muslim people live fantastic in America, and that's the whole point, right? Yeah. So I know, I think you touched on it earlier, but the fact that, almost the less God we have in society, the more problems we're going to see around us, which I totally agree. And there's a military historian, I post him all the time. He's like almost 80 years old, but incredibly smart guy. His name is Victor Davis Hanson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's done a few discussions with Jordan Peterson. He talks about how because our society's been so wealthy and prosperous that we're almost living in like a hyper affluent society to where it's actually being counterproductive now. Like we people who they don't leave their little privileged bubble, unfortunately, and then that's why you start to see like gays for Palestine. It's like they would not allow that in that country. Like, you almost have to have some perspective to be grateful for what we have. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people lack.
I think a lot of people in society are just uneducated about, because like you said, they're in their bubble, they're content in their bubble. There's no reason to go out and learn more or learn cultures or languages and do things. And so then they get these twisted ideas like gays for Palestine. And you're like, if you would actually get out of your bubble and learn what Palestine's values are, that would not be the case. And so I think a lack of education across the board for society is really getting us in trouble.
Yeah. And a lack of wisdom, right?
I think a lot of those people are just lost too. They're just looking to be a part of something. And so they're just trying to find the nearest thing. What can I maybe fit in with? The big part of the trans ideology is like, oh, I don't feel comfortable in my body. So then you go to someone who's like, oh, I can make you comfortable. They're looking for things. They're seeking the things, which is a good thing. But we just need the right leaders and the people to direct them to the right places.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I'm so one of the main topics I talk about is communism, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, communism, that's like, didn't we already fix that a long time ago? Like, what the hell? And it's like, well, communism is Marxism, Marxist philosophy, which is this whole oppressor versus oppressed. And what we know nowadays is Marxism can be used as a political weapon, and actually it always has been. So it's like the communists back in the day, they say, hey, look around you, there's poverty over here and there. It's because of the wealthy class. Hey, vote for me and I'll make things right. And it's like they're not actually doing any productive economic policies or social policies. They're just saying, vote for me, give me power, and I'll change things. 2 decades go by, 100 million dead, right? And it's because these ideas don't work. You need productive people for your society to run. So 100%. Communism is not over with. I actually think we're in kind of a newer wave of communism, or like woke Marxism is what they call it. But it's this new ideology that people lack individual purpose themselves or, a relationship with God. And therefore they start to look for something else to be spiritual about. And now it's like, oh, well, systematic racism. I'm going to, do whatever I can to fight that. Or, hey, trans people are being oppressed, so I'm going to, stand up for the oppressed and do this and that. And it's often well-intended. 100%. And what I have come to learn through conversations and just, research, and I could be wrong, but, the people who are advocating for this woke ideology, about 5% of them, in my view, are actual egotistical narcissists who are just looking for power and want to control what you say and control what you do and all this type of stuff. And those are the loud fringe, right? And then the other 95% are often well-intended people who don't care about politics. So they're doing their own thing. And they're like, well, I don't want black people to be oppressed. Okay, I'm going to vote for this. Or I don't want trans people being marginalized. I'm going to vote for this. So I actually think it's that 5% that's kind of just tricking the other 95%. Because I know so many people who will be like, no, it is real, it's happening. And again, it's a little bit of virtue signaling on their behalf. They're trying to express to other people that they are virtuous, right? And which you're kind of falling down the trap. But again, I think it's the 5% actually just manipulating the other 95% into believing that, oh wait, socialism, that sounds pretty good. It's like it's failed every time, every society it's touched. So
100%.
But so I try to bring more people's attention to this woke Marxism and all that stuff. But
it's very dangerous to have that kind of mentality of like, even like the biggest thing I see right now is that the government is like promoting a lot of big entities and companies like BlackRock to buy everything. And then big
ESG, social justice boxes to check. That's what I call it.
And then they want you to own nothing. You'll be happy that you own nothing. And you'll just have to rent and live in a poverty cycle for the rest of your life. And that's just like so dangerous that, like you said, that 95%, those are the sheep in society. And that's why they have that saying, lion, not sheep. Because if they were to wake up and realize what's happening, what they're truly supporting, then like the silent majority is very real. I think so many people believe the right things, they're just scared to say it. But if those people rise up and take back our society, I think we'd be in a much different place than we are right now.
Definitely. That's why we're having conversations, 100%. Right? Yeah. Like, seriously, it really is. Like, someone recently said it was they've awoken the sleeping giant, which is the logical majority, where it's like, I don't want the government doing X, Y, Z, and no, I don't think that minors should get sex changes, and I don't think they can consent to that. And again, it's like you do a little bit of thinking, and all of a sudden, those ideas are fucking insane. You know what I mean? But they have a really strong grasp of tricking people, both through social media, the Democrat Party, in my view, at least the modern Democrat Party. But you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think that the only good thing that came out of COVID was this awakening of the American people. I think through COVID and the government control that really just came down heavy on everybody, I think it woke up a lot of people to a lot of things, to the pharmaceutical industry and vaccines, and to the oppressive control that the government is trying to infringe on our rights. And I think that is the only good thing that came from COVID, is that a lot more people are just, even if they're not awake, they're a lot more just thoughtful. Like, is this right? Is this okay? And I think it woke up a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as what I've been saying the past few months is October 7th, right? The whole Hamas attack on Israel, I think woke up even more people. Because like I wasn't even, like I have a good buddy of mine who's Israeli, and I did a discussion with him, and he's born in, he was born in Israel, but he was raised in Northern California. He's American, right?
Yeah.
But it was just like all this crazy stuff started happening, and it's like, okay, taking a step back, regardless of what your views are on the war overseas, is it a good thing that college students are yelling, gas the Jews, death to Jews? It's like, that's not necessarily a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of what your views are, even if you are very critical of Israel, it is not good or death to Muslims, or death to white people, or death to, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to it, and it's kind of like what you said. It's like the silent majority, and the people are waking up to it. They are having conversations. And I forgot. So earlier I brought up the whole patriotism thing. So I'm a big believer that, call it relationship with God or not. I think a lot of kids these days lack purpose, right? I think we can all agree on that. And I think because they lack purpose, they don't want to, and I do mentoring and stuff, and people trying to choose a career. And there's a lot of people who, they don't feel super excited to become independent, right? It's almost like this, like living in your mom's basement mentality, where it's like, it is easier. Trust me, it's way easier to just do nothing. But I think over the long term, you'll become very depressed by it. And, of course, there's no right way to live, but there are a lot of wrong ways to live. And there are bad habits that we've seen throughout time that can lead to suffering and depression and higher suicide rates and anxiety rates and all this stuff. So I'm a big advocate of people who, if you don't know what you want to do, or you come from a poor family and you maybe can't go to college, join the military, right? Like, it gives you purpose, and it kind of gives you something to serve above yourself. And what was the other part I was going to mention? And there's a statistic, like, most young men between the ages of 18 and 22, that's usually when you screw your life up. But if you join the military, you at least have father figures and give you structure between the ages of 18 and 22. So even if you're a hamburger, you're going to not do something crazy, hopefully, and have a little guidance until you get your shit together and figure out what you want to do. What was your experience like in the military? Like, what made you want to even join? Like, I'd love to know more about that, and help educate teenagers who are thinking, like, what the heck am I going to do with my life?
So looking back, I think it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And it was hard. Like, by no means is it supposed to be a cakewalk. I was challenged in many different ways. But the big reason I joined is college became so expensive. Like, tuition a year, $70,000 plus. So I was like, I don't want that debt. I don't want to give that debt to my parents. I'm going to go to the military, get the GI Bill, and pay for my own college. That was my mentality. I did not want to become dependent on my parents. I didn't want to dig out of debt for the next 30, 40 years. So that was my way of setting up my life. And I think that's the best way to describe the military. It's a stepping stone for a lot of people. Some people do 20 years, and that's great. That works for them. But other people like me just do 4 years or 6 years. and that will set them up for life as well. So, like I said, there's a lot of structure. So I did have a lot of mentors, good and bad, and I think there's things to learn from each. Obviously, good mentors, you can copy them and see what they do well, and bad ones, you can say, I don't want to be that. How can I raise a better following by not utilizing those traits? So it was very difficult. Was in school for 2 years in training in South Carolina, went on a deployment, and then I got out medically, which was a blessing all in its own. But now that I'm out, I have amazing benefits, which is a thing that many people don't talk about, like VA home loan. I don't have to pay a down payment on a house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have a disability payment for the rest of my life. It's $4,000 tax free for the rest of my life. I have GI Bill. They pay for my school up to 36 months, and I have health care through them. Like, there's just so many things that, like, I've gotten out of the military, while also the privilege of just being able to serve. It was hard, but it was all worth it in the end. So to anyone who's considering it, I would definitely say look into it. It's not right for everybody. There's a lot of people who commit suicide, and it is very mentally tough. But through all those challenges, you will grow and you will refine yourself and you will find purpose. So if it's right, go find a recruiter, and it's always good to have information and knowledge. So do your research, figure out which branch you want to do. If I went back, I probably would have joined a different branch, maybe Air Force or, who knows. But
which branch were you in again?
I was in the Navy.
Navy, got it.
And I was a machinist mate nuclear. I worked on an aircraft carrier in the engine room, which had 2 nuclear reactors in. So that was challenging in itself. But yeah, I would just encourage anyone who's interested. It will be a challenge, but it's worth it. But always, information is power. Always do your research and never rush yourself into it.
Yeah. And like any big endeavor for a young adult, go talk to, a recruiter, but also other folks who have served.
100%.
Get the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Yep,
and I always tell college students that it's like, hey, you want to go be an accountant? Cool. Go talk to 10 accountants and ask for the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're going to get a whole 100%. Lot of different perspectives.
Yeah.
I know me, myself, I was studying to go to law school until I talked to 10 attorneys and was like, holy cow, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was all law and order presentations, and then I found out that maybe 1% of your job is actually going to court and trial and all that stuff, and the other 99% is sitting by yourself and reading. I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah. But that's interesting. You mentioned that. Did you have the choice? Like when you said you were working kind of like a mechanical position.
Yep.
Did you choose that? Did you have that flexibility?
That. So then when you join, they do obviously all the medical screening, make sure you don't have any broken bones or any underlying medical conditions. So you have to be first fit for full duty, they call it, which means you're medically ready. Then you take an aptitude test. It's called the ASVAB. You have to score a certain score. So I scored pretty well on it, and then I was able to choose my job. It's not the case for everybody, but you can always go in, say what you want to do, and as long as you can provide the appropriate score, then they'll let you do that job.
What was boot camp like? That must have been a big, scary thing that you're doing on your own for the first time, right?
It was different. It was very hard. Not because of what we were doing. Like, the physical training for me wasn't too hard. I played sports, so it wasn't too taxing. The hardest part was I didn't have my phone for 8 weeks, which has obviously changed since I was 10. I had a phone always. I was always able to text or call loved ones and always have those conversations. But I was in the dark for 8 weeks. I had to write letters like they did back in the day, which was tough. But I would say that was the hardest part. But besides that, it was only 8 weeks, so not the end of the world.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had a good bond with the people that you were, doing boot camp with, or?
I did. A couple of them. I'm not really in touch with a lot of them to this day, but during the 8 weeks, you definitely felt a little bit of camaraderie because you're all going through the same struggle together. So it was good while it lasted, I would say.
Yeah. And then you mentioned deployment as well. Are you comfortable like talking about that or sharing like your experience on that?
Sure. Yeah. So in the Navy, on a carrier specifically, it's not always a deployment people think of. As an aircraft carrier, our job is to be the big, loud, powerful ship near the presence, always posing a threat. So a lot of it was just patrolling. So we would just do circles in the Philippines Sea, in the North China Sea, just doing laps and laps and laps. And this was towards the tail end of COVID, so we didn't get to go on as many port calls as the normal deployments do. We were supposed to go to Thailand, Singapore, South Korea, the Middle East, Bahrain, but we never did because of COVID. So it was just a lot of menial work. We were out to sea for, I think, 90 plus days in a row, which was obviously very tough without seeing land and all that. But it was, I would say, probably the toughest season of my life, just because it was work all the time. You'd be at work. They would sometimes wake you up in the middle of the night to do something. And after work, you have nowhere to go, so you're still at work. So it was just a lot of tough work overall. But it was good, and I'm just glad that I'm past it all now.
And then you mentioned you got injured.
Yes.
What went down with that?
I was in a series of motorcycle accidents, and that led to other overlying injuries and stuff. So then they deemed me unfit to continue my job, because carriers are very tight, and you got to go up and down 12 flights of stairs at a time, and this wasn't the right situation, so they medically discharged me.
And you don't ride anymore?
Actually, my motorcycle got stolen here in California.
Wow, so. Really?
So I don't ride, not by choice, but...
Damn. Yeah, that sucks. I know. My dad used to ride motorcycles until he crashed. Then he broke his collarbone or tailbone, one of the two, and now he doesn't ride anymore. And then my older brother used to ride until he crashed, and then now he doesn't ride anymore. It kind of seems
to be the common thing.
And
what sucks is that most of the time it's not even the rider's fault. Other cars who just don't look, and what sucks is that the motorcycle rider is always the one that pays the price because they're not in an enclosed capsule. So
bigger risk taker.
It's tough. So when we're out in the country and it's more open roads, I might ride again, but not here with these drivers.
You're probably worn
We'll see.
You're not a big fan of it, huh?
Not really, no.
You had some fun rides on the back at least?
No.
Really?
He crashed before I met him. And then he had the motorcycle when I met him, but
it wasn't really a rider-friendly one. It was a track bike. It's a really fast one.
Oh yeah.
And in California, you'd have to go, somewhere out. I wouldn't want to drive on all these crazy streets.
True.
So I was like, I'm good. No thanks.
Wow. Well, glad you're okay. Yep. I mean, it sucks
that's a God's story. I could not be here right now. And, by the grace of God, I am.
Well, and you got all the benefits of the military. You did your time, you know what I mean?
Time,
and that's, again, I always try to tell people, any career you're in, including myself, entry-level sales, you're doing grinding, horrible grinding, you know what I mean? Not horrible, but really hard work, and a lot of F you, calling people, and, but once you get out of phase one, then you start to have a little credibility under your belt and on your resume, and now other employers will trust you with responsibility, and you have job options, and life gets easier over time if you're paying attention, as my dad says. And I guess one on the tail end of our discussion, I always like to ask people that I'm speaking with, one, what knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to a young adult, maybe someone in their teens who could be in any situation?
That's a good question. I had to think about this for a really long time. If I had to tell someone something for the next generation, I would just say continue to look outward instead of inward. I feel like specifically Gen Z and our generation is very self-seeking, what's in it for me, all about themselves, putting themselves higher and higher. When, sure, that's important to a degree, but also there's so much more than just yourself. Look around you, help others, volunteer, do your part for the community to build that camaraderie, to see other people. It's not all about you, There's a lot more than just you, and I think once everyone starts looking outward, we can build that sort of community that is lost definitely in society.
Yeah, that's good. I would say don't be afraid to kind of live out your purpose. And I felt this pressure when I was in high school to go to college, to take the path that everyone else was taking, just because, that's what was common. But now looking back, I'm so glad that I joined the military. And that's not going to be it for everyone. You can be an electrician, you can be a plumber, you can go straight into sales. Like, there's nothing saying you have to go to college or do what everyone else is doing. So I think everyone's purpose is unique. So I would encourage young guys, don't be afraid to take risks, like start a podcast or, join the military, and just try to find your purpose, because everyone is different. And I think people need to realize that there's not a certain person that you're supposed to be. Like, you have to find what you want to be and kind of seek that. So I encourage young guys to do that.
Yeah, and I think what was key there too is you have to find a purpose, right? It's like you can't just live, willy-nilly, just kind of crossing your fingers, things will work out. Pick a direction and work hard at it. Pursue excellence, even if you're going to be a plumber. Go be the best plumber you can possibly be. 100%. And after 10 years, you're going to be you're not just a plumber. You know time management. You know how to communicate with people. You know how to run a business, manage customers, do a good job, right? Like, if you are, and again, I'm not a plumber, but if you get better over time, maybe you can do more appointments per day and get more money, right? Versus doing one appointment per day because you're going slow or not figuring it out or not learning, right? And it's also okay to fail, right? Like, if you do 5 years of being a plumber and you figure out that you don't like it, that's completely okay. You've learned something. You've worked. You were productive. So I like that you said that a lot. I think a lot of, like I said, young adults and especially men just lack purpose and need to pick something and fucking work hard. You can't avoid working hard. You just can't. So
I like that. I have implemented this in my life, but just the idea of being 1% better every day and just grinding and continuing to find things. And a big phase we're in right now is learning. Like, we're reading books a lot. We're continuing to grow our mind, going to the gym a lot, growing your body, like listening to Charlie Kirk and other political leaders. Like, there's always ways to grow. So find that way to be 1% better every day. And in a year, you won't even recognize who you were a year ago. Like, that's so cool, the idea of continuous growth. Yeah,
it's wisdom.
And
I guess final question then, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of America?
I kind of touched on this earlier, but kind of like going back to the basics, figuring out how we were founded, going back to that because that worked and that was the direction of our country. Charlie Kirk talks about it a lot. Like, at his event, he had those little like pocket Constitution books. I don't know if you saw that. And I think that's so great that he passes those out and he talks about going back to the basics and figuring out really how this country was founded, because if we don't go back to how it was, it can only go downwards, right? We can only keep going downwards, and I think we see that in our society today. Everyone's trying all this new stuff and it's not working. It's only bringing more turmoil and more chaos, more confusion in society, with everyone lost in what they believe and what they don't believe, and they're just trying things, and everybody's lost. And so I think what I want to see is the country going back to the roots, back to the classics, back to how it was supposed to be. And I think when we go back that way, then we will really thrive again.
Yeah. The alternative is communism or tyranny, right? Yeah. It's like, if we aren't, sticking to the basics and finding autonomy ourselves, we're going to become the sheep, and we want the government to take care of us, and we want the government to do everything. Then all of a sudden, all the power gets bubbled up to that, BlackRock, Democrat Party elites at the top, and then less power for the rest of us, which will eventually collapse. It's not like that's a sustainable course. It will collapse. What's your perspective on that?
I mean, 100%, that's it. I mean, I think we're in such a critical point in our history right now, and in 60 years we'll read about it in a textbook, but it is so important right now that we're on the verge of, like, we have to take our country back. If we don't, then who knows how far down the rabbit hole that we'll go. So it's so important that that people will find truth, people will find wisdom, like you were talking about, and I just hope that our next generation can experience what we got to experience. Just getting married, having kids. I mean, less and less people are having kids. Going to church or whatever religious freedom that you have. And I think it's just so important that we can, like she said, go back to the basics. And I hope that the future generation can have that.
Yeah. Back to the basics, work hard, find purpose, love the country, have gratitude for the country. Because there are plenty of examples of what life could be like outside of these borders.
100%. Yeah. We are so blessed to be in this amazing country, and we are literally destroying our own country from within, just because we have we don't know how blessed we are with what we have, and it's very sad.
Yeah, I think it's the only way to destroy the West, right?
Yeah.
Western
Absolutely.
civilization is literally from within.
From within.
Is you get these adversaries who want their own power and want to manipulate their own people and get more money for themselves at the expense of everyone else.
Exactly.
Right? So,
100%.
well, I appreciate you guys coming
Thank
out,
you.
and it was awesome the fact that we got to meet only a few weeks ago, yet
Yeah.
have so much in common in terms of what we want for, you know, our society today as well as the next generation. But appreciate your service and, you know, everything that you've done for the country and advocating, you know, ideas for young men out there. I think more young men should be like yourself. And, you know, I appreciate you being so open to having
Thank you.
dialogue and conversations. And, you know, again, even if we don't agree on everything,
Right.
the only path forward is to have conversations. And, you know, they have woken up the sleeping giant of the silent minority. So I think things are hopefully going to get a little better, but, you know, we'll just keep doing our thing.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Thank you for having us.
of course. Yeah. Appreciate you guys.
Of course.